It has been a very, very long time since I've done a video with nature and animals and fish and things like that. So what we're going to be doing today is building an ecosphere. I've never built an ecosphere before, but I've come across some phenomenal videos on YouTube from Life in Jars and Jartopia, and it really inspired me to make my own. So this is all of the equipment that I've bought for today's ecosphere build. And again, I've never built one of these before. Hopefully it will be successful, and I'll be doing update videos in the future to show you how it's progressed and how it's evolved. And that's kind of the magic of the ecosphere. Not only do you take little chunks of dirt from your yard or from a certain environment and put them in the ecosphere, which means you don't know everything that's in there. You'll get all these little tiny creatures that live inside the ecosphere, inside the soil, that you'll see emerge and evolve. Not evolve, but the ecosystem inside the jar will evolve. And that's what's really fun. So this here is a very, very large terrarium thing from Walmart. Let's see, it says 10-inch tall, it's made of glass, and as you can see, it's pretty large. So this is the size of container I went with here. You've got a little cork lid here that can come off. It's got a nice wide mouth you can put your hand in to get inside of there and, you know, put dirt and rocks and little bits and bobs of nature inside there as such, which is pretty cool. Then these tools I got here are pretty sweet. They're kind of like your aquascaping tools that you'd see in the aquarium industry, but they're a little bit different. You could also use aquascaping tools, but I mostly bought these because of that awesome little tiny shovel that this came with, which is going to be really, really handy for digging up specific little specimens, tiny plants out in the wild and stuff. So that's going to be really useful. It's also got these bamboo tweezers. I would probably prefer aquascaping tweezers, but I think these will work just fine. You've got this little Reiki thing, which I doubt I'll use, and this little paintbrush might be handy for brushing dirt off of rocks and stuff to make it look pretty once I set this all up, because basically I'm going to use the spade. I might use a bigger spade to put soil into the little terrarium, but basically you're just going to take scoops of dirt, dump them in here, and essentially all of the bugs and the little microorganisms inside the soil and the plants that you put in there will all come together to form a working ecosystem. Back here is the most expensive thing in this whole bit. It's this desk lamp that I got from Home Depot. It's an adjustable height table lamp thing. It's about $40. You probably wouldn't even need to buy one of these. I just felt like being fancy and getting it. People seem to have excellent luck keeping these in their windowsills, although this is a bit too big to keep in your windowsill, which is another part of the reason I needed to get a lamp. But some of the best ecospheres I've seen use lamps, so I did that. So that looks really great. Walmart has some cheap ones, but they didn't look very nice, so I went with this one. It was very, very nice. And then this here is a LED grow light. I've used these with great success with my succulents. They're very intense, so it might end up being too intense for this, but with that table lamp I can back up the light. I can put it directly overhead so that the cork will shade a lot of the terrarium, the ecosphere. So this light should work pretty well. This is about $14 from Home Depot. And then these two things, the terrarium and the tools, came from Walmart. So let's go off into the woods and go find some little areas that might have a high biodiversity of life, and let's start putting some stuff in the ecosphere. It's gonna be fun. Hope you guys like it. Step one of building an ecosphere is a drainage layer. What you're gonna want at the bottom is a layer of rocks and gravel to serve kind of as a storage area, in a sense, for water, so that the soil will sit on top of this drainage layer, and when water is in the system, it can kind of be under and in this drainage layer so that it doesn't create mold and things like that. So basically, I'm just gonna take some of these gravelly rocks. They're kind of large, as you can see here, and I'm going to be putting them in the ecosphere. I'm not entirely going to only use these rocks because I will need a lot of them, and this is actually in a garden bed from the yard, and I don't want to take all of these stones from here. So I'm going to use a layer of these larger stones at the bottom, and then I know of a source elsewhere in the yard where I can find smaller stones that I can use for this. So once I fill up this layer, we will move on to the second rock site. So this here is our first layer of the drainage, and let's move on to a second site where we get some smaller rocks and layer those on top. Now we're out in the forest, and these rocks aren't actually smaller, but they're a different type of rock, and since they aren't really part of a garden bed, I'm not going to feel as bad about taking a bunch of them out. So we can put another layer of these on top to get a nice thick drainage layer. So let's do that. Now I think the drainage layer is complete, and now it's time to go add some soil. One of the first places I'm going to pull soil from for my ecosphere is this old rotting wood pile. If we take a look in here, you'll see that many of these old logs have basically turned to soil. Especially over here, you can see that they're decomposing at a very fast rate. These have been here for a few years, and they've quickly turned to soil. And there's a massive biodiversity in this area. You get millipedes and wood lice and isopods and worms, beetles, salamanders. If I find a salamander, I won't be putting it in my ecosphere. I think it'll be too large of a predator, and they seem to like very cool, very damp spots, and I don't know how cool and damp my ecosphere will be, so I don't want to accidentally kill a salamander. But the other insects and creatures that live in here will be going in the ecosphere, and it's going to be a massive biodiversity and just really great soil for these creatures. I think a lot of them eat decomposing wood and the fungi that grows on it, so this will be a great place to get a food source for these little creatures. And there's also little small chunks of bark and wood that we can use in the ecosphere too. I think I need a little bit more soil in there. Because that sticker is that paper-based sticker, it's not gonna come off easily. So what I'm gonna try to do is build up the soil and also build up the hardscape, which is your rocks and your wood and all that, to hide the sticker instead of trying to remove it, which will be a pain in the butt. So I'm gonna add some more soil, and we'll try to find some mossy, lichen-covered pieces of bark and stuff. I'm looking around and I'm seeing some stones with some moss and stuff on them, so we'll see what we can find. As you can see, I've begun adding the hardscape. I've got the moss, I've got some rotting wood, and we've already got some creatures coming in on the hardscape. A couple millipedes, there's a slug, and a giant spider almost went in there. He was underneath of that rotting log, but probably fortunately he fell off and didn't make it in the ecosphere, so, because he'd probably be too big of a predator and would kill everything else in the system. I also think I saw an earwig go in here too, and a cockroach, so this will be fun. This, I think, may be the final hardscape. It may go through some iterations, but as you can see, I've got this big piece of bark hiding the sticker in the back and also creating a shelter for creatures to hide. I've got some moss as well on some rotting wood. I will add more plants here in a bit. That's the next step. After finding some more dirt and some more things that contain some insects. I don't think I have any isopods yet, so I'm gonna go find a few of those and put them in here. There already is a pretty large biodiversity though. There's a few species of millipedes. I have seen a spider in here, and a few other things in here. I've got some little pieces of bark for the millipedes to hide under, and I would like some more stones, but I haven't found any cool ones that I think look good or have moss growing on them. So let's go look for some plants and also for perhaps some isopods as well. Now that we've added our hardscape and made it look like a messy organic forest floor, it is now time to add some plants. And I think this species is one of the ones we're gonna add. I'm gonna put a lot of different types so that there's a good biodiversity as well. Some will die, some will live, and in the end, hopefully, a stable ecosystem will emerge. These are the type of plants I'm gonna get. Probably this exact specimen right here because it's very small. That's a thick root ball, I like it. So far, I think it's coming along quite nicely. It may be difficult to see here, but I added in this plant right here, I've added in this plant here, and then I'm going to be adding this guy back here in this corner. So let's do that on camera. There we have it. That looks pretty nice. I also found this small low-lying plant that I think I want to have in the front of the terrarium. Whoop. Just like that. Hopefully its roots will take. Here's another low-lying small plant that I found, and that's actually exactly where I want it. It's got little hairs on its leaves, which likely evolved to repel insects. So this one may actually live a long time if it finds this environment to be suitable, because I believe those hairs are meant to keep insects from eating it. And I see a tiny little seedling here as well from something else, so we'll see what that turns into. The centerpiece plant for this terrarium will be this fern that hopefully I can pull out from its little hidey hole here. I think it looks really beautiful. Oh, look at the giant slug. Look at that guy. Let's get him out of here. I don't want him to crush him. There you go, buddy. So let's try to get this fern out of here. Ferns usually do well in small containers, although this one may have grown into this rotting log and it may not be possible to get it out cleanly. It's moving. They usually have like a rhizome of sorts underneath, and I don't think it'll grow unless that comes with it, so that's why I'm using this shovel, not just haphazardly pulling at it. There it is. Do not know if its rhizome came with it, but there's a healthy chunk of dirt underneath of here. That may be the rhizome there, or it could be a part of the tree trunk. But regardless, that will be our centerpiece. Much like where this fern came from, its new home is going to be in the center of this ecosphere. It's going to be in between here and here, and it's hopefully going to nestle in right here. The chunk of dirt it came with is quite large. I'm going to try to trim it down a little bit and just kind of get some of this dirt off. And actually, I was going to do it outside of the ecosphere, but I'm going to get some of this dirt to go inside of here as well. There's probably some little bacteria and insect eggs maybe, and all sorts of little treats in here that can enhance the ecosphere. Now I think it's small enough where I can hopefully, oh yeah, look at that. Just set it in place. I'm not going to try to bury it. There's probably bugs under the soil. I don't want to crush them. So I'm just going to set it right here. And there we go, that's the centerpiece, and I think the ecosphere is almost done. There's a few other plant species I want to add to it. I'm also going to add a little bit of rainwater to it. I think it may be somewhat dry. You don't want to get too much water in these because then you'll get mold problems, but you also don't want them to be too dry or the mosses and things are going to not be happy. So you want it to be somewhat humid from what I've seen online. At this point, I would consider the ecosphere to be complete. There's nothing more that I can really add to it, and in fact, there's actually a large biodiversity of both plant and animal species. We'll take a look at some of the insects and other animals that call this ecosphere home, but for right now, let's take a look at some of the plant species. The most common and active creature in this terrarium is the Canadian flat-backed millipede. There's a small colony with 3 adults and 2 juveniles, and I've seen the adults breeding in the substrate and on the surface multiple times, so there's likely more babies to come. Although they're a super common millipede species in my area, I love their orange coloration, and they are a delight to watch. I've only seen one of these millipedes. This type spends its life underground for the most part. I've never seen it on the surface. As far as isopods or pillbugs go, they're actually surprisingly reclusive and uncommon. This is the best look I could get at a pillbug. Probably my favorite creature in the ecosphere so far, though, is this clover mite. It's large, it's bright red, it's clumsy, it's derpy, and is in a very strange way actually kind of cute. There are mollusks in this ecosphere as well. One of them is this small slug. The other one being this even smaller and incredibly slow snail. This brown click beetle roams the terrarium at night. You can see it here next to a couple of millipedes who I believe may be mating. There are predators in this ecosphere too, one of them being this lone female European earwig. These are omnivores. They'll eat both plants and animals from my understanding. I spotted this lone ant wandering the terrarium. It's probably going to die without the help of its colony, but it has been alive for about 4 days now. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets eaten by this incredibly tiny jumping spider, though. Look at how small this thing is. Just about wraps up this video of the Ecosphere. I hope you all liked seeing the build portion of the video. I think that came together very nicely. It came out just the way I pictured it. What you're seeing here on screen is pretty much what I had pictured in my mind's eye. As this Ecosphere evolves and develops and a stable ecosystem emerges, I will post more videos of it probably in the next coming week, so make sure to subscribe for that. But in the future, I'll catch you in the next one. Have a good day.